Welcome to the No Love podcast, where we decrease tomorrow's divorce rate today by teaching singles and couples alike how to experience love on purpose and not by chance. I am your host, Edward L. Fairley, accompanied by my wonderful, lovely host, Michelle Larkin. Michelle, say hi to the people.
Hi, world.
Today's show is really not going to be long at all. Well, it might not be long at all. It wasn't meant to be long at all, but it's definitely meant to provoke thought and make us consider our responses on the topic of communication or in the line of communicating. Hi, Miss Clarissa. Good to see you. Before I do that, I was told that I don't say much about the hashtag nines anymore. So for those who are live with us and you would like to participate in the conversation, whenever you hear anything that you found to be an aha moment or you realize is a truth that contradicted something that you didn't realize was truth and you thought it would, your thought process in the past was a realization or something that was the law, and you realize from an explanation that, wow, I've been believing this all this time and now I realize the truth, you would put simply a hashtag 9 with the aha moment just to share what it is that you took away, and that in turn will allow for us to know what kind of topics we need to dive a little more deeper into in the past. Where the hashtag 9 comes from, the 9 is the number of truth. Ironically, this is episode 9, so this would be the truth episode. And again, to just expound on the number 9. Number 9 is the number of truth. The number of truth meaning if you multiply the number 9 against any number, the actual added up multiple will always go back to 9 in its simplest form. So if we did 9 times 2, that'd be 18. The sum of that, which is 1 plus 8, would go back to 9. 9 times 3, 27. 2 plus 7, 9. 9 times 11, 99. 9 plus 9, 18. 1 plus 8, back to 9. It doesn't matter what number you multiply 9 by. If you add up its sum and bring it down to its simplest form, it's going to always be 9, which represents truth, meaning it doesn't matter how you see it. The truth is what it is. You can't escape the truth. So that's what hashtag 9 means. So when you have an aha moment or profound realization to where you say, wow, hashtag 9, I didn't know that, or that was pretty deep, that is what you will put in the comments and we'll reply to you accordingly. So let's get into today's topic. Today's topic is you keep trying to learn what it is that the right thing to say when hold on, let me see. I want to word it the same way that I put the actual title here.
When your speech problem.
There it is. Okay, so the title of today's episode is You Keep Trying to Learn What to Say, but a speech problem stems from a hearing problem. And if I was to start this show off by saying people with hearing problems have a speech problem, typically a person would think of a person that is slightly deaf and how their words, the way that they pronounce their words might be a little off and sound a little distorted or just not aligned with what you typically hear. And the reason for that is because they have a obvious hearing problem, which is why they might have a hearing aid or what have you. So when you hear them speaking, they're not speaking in a manner of clarity. And that statement, I remember hearing someone say that, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks, because I'm like, that's so much deeper than the context in which it's shared. So when we say a person when a person has a hearing, when they have a speaking problem, is because they have a hearing problem. That is the same issue that we have when we are arguing, when we are miscommunicating and getting frustrated with one another. It's because we have a hearing problem, and because of that, we're going to like dive into what those hearing problems are. So I wanted to start with the first hearing problem, and I guess the best way that I can say this is, if you find yourself getting into a lot of arguments and saying, well, what the heck did I say for it to get that big? Why in the world did she or he go off from me saying that? My question is, what voice are you hearing? And what I mean by that is, sometimes something can be said to us and we're not necessarily hearing what's said. We're hearing what we were told as children: you're stupid, or a previous relationship, you're not good enough, or so those things that we hear from the person that's just expressing a thought or even a conflicting moment at that time, they are simply expressing something that they're trying to resolve, and we're hearing something that has nothing to do with what they're saying. And with that, we are responding according to our hearing problem. We're hearing our mom or our dad years ago talk about how dumb we are, or how stupid we are, and we're responding to that as opposed to what's being said, to where we can have an actual intellectual conversation and get to the root of whatever the actual problem is. So I wanted to start with that. You ever experienced that, Michelle, or understand what I mean by what voice are you actually listening
Oh, absolutely,
to?
absolutely. One of the things that I try to write down so I don't miss the point.
Yeah.
Get caught up, but, right? But when you're trying to discern between your internal voices and the external voices, the inability to discern is what can clog up the listening. And I've been guilty of that, and I'll probably go into that a little bit more later. But listening is not just listening to what somebody's saying to you or what is around you. Sometimes you're like what you're saying is your internal chatter and your external experience are out of alignment, which makes you very incapable of being effective.
Yeah, most certainly. I remember I was invited to, I had working in an actual establishment where I had my clients over the phone. Oftentimes the calls could be recorded to monitor our interactions with the clients. And that particular call that I had was monitored, and I was brought into the room by my supervisor and her boss. And they sat me down, and the manager told me how, well, actually first my supervisor brought it to me and played the actual recording. And I was like, man, that doesn't sound good at all. My intent was not the way it came across, but I could hear how it could sound bad to the other party. And before I even got to the manager, I was like, man, I actually want to call the guy back and make sure that my intent was understood as opposed to the way it sounded over the phone call. So then I had the meeting with the manager, who also heard the call. Hey, Stacy Bronson, good to see you. I haven't seen you in years. Wow, you look great. So I was brought to the actual office, and the manager just went in. She said, I'm very disappointed in you. You didn't sound to our standard. And the customer, he had been with us for, I don't know, however many years. And she kept saying, I'm very disappointed in you. When you walk this building, people look to you as like the epitome of what management, people typically think that you are management in this establishment. She went on and on and on. And when she was finished, I said, I agree with you 100%. I said, I actually wanted to call the guy back before this meeting to make sure that he understood that my passion was to make sure that he was not going to end up having a fine, but his pushback didn't come across as him really seeing the value of me not wanting to adjust his contract to where he would get fined from the state. So I was passionate and I wanted that to be understood, but I definitely didn't want it to come across the way that I even heard it when I heard it myself. And I said, the fact that I got to hear it, I'm glad that it happened, because if I'm speaking like this and it's coming across that way to other people, I definitely would like the opportunity to make sure that I make that tweak or adjustment. I said, but so I'm looking forward to you listening to my calls in the future and us having conversations about how well I did. I said, but I also want to thank you for the compliment. And she looked like, wait, what? I said, and I want to thank you for the compliment. Also, I said, though it was a bad call, I do want to thank you for the compliment. And she looked at me like, what do you mean? She looked at me like, this is supposed to be a session where you're defending yourself or mad or whatever. I'm telling you off or whatever. And I said, no, thank you for the compliment. I said, in order for you to have to be disappointed in me, that means you had to have high expectations. I said, so with that, I said, that is a compliment to me. If you said you were disappointed in me several times, might I add, I said, that means you had high expectations of me. And to me, that is a compliment. And I thank you for that compliment. And she just didn't know what to do with that. You could tell. She was like, this meeting is not going the way that I envisioned it. She said, well, I'm glad that you understood where you went wrong or what have you. I said, I had already sent you the email explaining where I felt it went wrong and how it was not good representation of the company. And I share that story just to say, when I listen for everything, the context of what's being said, where it had to come from. So anybody else typically would have heard just, man, I really messed up. But I heard the compliment in what she said, because she said she's disappointed. You can't be disappointed in someone that you don't look or have high expectations of. It just doesn't work that way. If you have low expectations of them, you just go in on them and tell them how much of a failure or whatever they are, and you go on about your business. You don't go on about how that person is viewed and how even they wish they had their your type of influence when it comes to the people that look at you and you're already considered management and things of that nature. Even though you won't take on the role that they try to offer you, they wouldn't go through all that. So I'm listening because I don't have a hearing problem. I always listen to, for one, learn and understand. And I learned that, wow, she has really, and the crazy thing about it, she had just became, hey, Miss Shauna Ware, good to see you. She had just became my manager. So that was like her first impression of me. So she clearly was making assumptions about me, or her expectations were based off of what has been going on in the actual establishment. So I share that story just to say, even things that sound harsh, there's really typically good things behind it if you're hearing correctly. But if you get so caught up on the negative feedback or what have you, you really miss opportunities to, one, connect, and also opportunities to learn. Go ahead, Michelle.
So if you unpack your experience a little bit and go back to what you said, your ability to speak in that situation, because you were listening, was moderated, right? So you didn't fly off the handle and get emotional. Exactly. You were able to kind of stay present in the conversation, and so that you could gain value and be objective, or just stay in the conversation long enough to get to resolution. And so, like you said, listening, having a hearing problem makes you speak differently. If you heard something different, or you heard what you felt, or you heard your insecurities, or you heard all the things that those things could have triggered, then you wouldn't have been able to be present. You would have been just like, and I'm not, and what you're not going to tell me is what you didn't hear was, and you weren't even there, so how do you know? You don't know, blah, 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 blah. But again, at the root of it was, I had high expectations for you, which is a good thing. And number two, if you checked back in with yourself, you realize I wasn't completely wrong, but I wasn't completely right. And that's a fair assessment. for somebody to make. It doesn't mean that we're both wrong or they're coming for me all the time. It's like, I wasn't completely right, but I wasn't completely wrong. So let's clear this up.
Miss Lisa, welcome. Welcome to the show. And you're exactly right. That's another thing too that I like that you said, because I indirectly diffused a situation. And also because of me being or hearing correctly, she was able to receive my explanation of what actually happened, and she was definitely receptive to how I broke everything down, as to me being receptive to the feedback that she gave me, as well as to my intent. Because I even explained to her how, if she listened to the call, you can tell that my intent did not align with what it is that or the way that it could have come across, because I would not have, the way that it did sound, I would not have spent as much time trying to keep the guy's contract the way that it was to avoid the fine if I just was dismissing him.
But you were making them hear him too. Like, you were making them be more present to listen to. Exactly.
So I was helping them to hear just as much as I was hearing. Yeah, exactly. So in the end, they actually heard, like, yeah, you know what? Now that you say that, like, if you really were trying to dismiss him, for one, you would have let him have the $500 fine. Two, you would have said, okay, well, go ahead. You want to do it this way? Go on about your business. Instead, because I was hearing him correctly, I could tell that he was making a decision based off his past experiences, and the law had changed. So I could tell that he did not trust me. He trusted his past experience in the establishment in which he did the transaction with. So basically what I did was I said, you can ask the same questions that you're asking me to that establishment, whom I knew he trusted and who he would have been fine, which still got the results that I wanted in the first place. He didn't take off the actual piece of the contract, and he went and contacted the actual establishment to find out if what I was saying was true. He didn't trust me. I was okay with that. I wasn't okay with him getting an unnecessary fine. So when I called him back, he actually told me, don't worry about it. He's glad that he called the establishment. So again, my intent, even though the way that it was presented or packaged didn't come across the way that I would have preferred it have to, what I got the results that I wanted. and he saw the value of my intent because it prevented him from having a fine. Go ahead, Michelle.
So
Miss Lisa said hi, by the way.
Hi. So the question to me is, your intent was on point. Your delivery was a little shaky.
That's right.
And the people who were observing and monitoring were listening for a different reason, right? So they were listening for a certain tone.
That's right.
Even more than they were listening for the accuracy of the outcome. And so even the ability to discern that kind of information was able to help you communicate back to them that the end result actually was in everybody's favor. It was a win-win all around.
That's right.
And that the noise created by the poor packaging, I mean, we're not perfect, but the poor packaging didn't really hinder the message. And so that takes me back to your point, which is, a bad speaking problem is a bad listening problem. So what you did communicate was that you heard the customer completely, like you were fully vested, fully engaged with the customer, heard what they were saying, and addressed their real concern effectively, even though the delivery was shaky. And so that is intending to say, we don't always get our delivery right. And sometimes our speaking we don't always even have the right vocabulary sometimes to really capture what we're trying to say.
We already had that show.
Yep. Right? Like, so sometimes you just don't have the vocabulary to deliver the message that you're trying to deliver. But if you can stick with it and stick to your intent, there's so many ways to communicate, right? So it's your eyes and it's your hands and it's all this other kind of thing. So there is another component of your story is that this was on the phone.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
that barrier was a part of the challenge of the communication. And that a good speaker has to take into consideration all of the environment.
Exactly.
in order to make
David
sure your message hits point.
Larry Owens, good to see y'all. Welcome to the show.
Hey, welcome.
All right, so just for those who have just popped on, the conversation, just to sum it up, is people with a hearing problem have a speaking problem. Typically, when you hear that, you think of a person that's deaf in the way that they speak, but that's deeper than that. That's what we're discussing on today's date. When we're discussing and having conversations with frustration and arguments and things of that nature, is typically because we heard incorrectly. So therefore, our speaking back to them is the problem. Because we had a hearing problem, we had a speaking problem. So typically, when you say something wrong or malicious or anything like that, is because you had a hearing problem. And hearing problem is way deeper than the surface. So hearing problem could be your insecurities. You heard your dad say how you weren't anything when you're in the past. Your previous relationship that was abusive, you heard them say that you weren't nothing. So when a person is just simply giving you feedback on an opportunity to how to approach, as to how to approach them, you're listening to the voice of the poor experience, and you're responding to that voice as opposed to the voice that's coming to you from a loving place that's just trying to make for a better relationship or even solution to a current situation. And it's interesting that you said they were listening from a different place, Michelle, because that actually goes to the previous episode. They were listening from a place of expectation. So they had already had a preconceived notion as to what the actual call was going to sound like. Mm-hmm. And as soon as it went off of the script that they had in their head, that's when
judging.
They had a problem. Yeah. So instead of saying, well, he just saved them, that man, $500 worth of fines, it might not have gone as shaky. Let's go ahead and coach him on that. She went straight into this is unacceptable, terrible, But again, I heard when she said, I'm disappointed in you, I heard that she had high expectations.
Had high expectations of it. I think one of the things you also bring up is that people focus on the how and not the what. And that is where we all tend to go off the rails. If we are so focused on how it's being communicated, again, people don't always have the right tools. We talked about this in a previous one. They're emotionally charged, and you get caught up in that. You use the example of how you give your wife 3 days after she has a moment. She'll have 3 days.
That's right.
Because she's not communicating. Or she's not ready to communicate on the right level. So if you focus on how she was communicating and not what she needed to say, then you wouldn't have given her the space. You'd be so caught up in, why can't you talk when I can talk? Why can't you say it the way I can say it? Why can't you be what I can? Why can't we just be like, because you're not me.
Yeah, most certainly.
No, you're not me.
Yeah. And actually, you brought up a good point, because a very common situation that I can assure you, people are going to hear this and be like, oh my gosh, that happens to me all the time, or a lot. The irony in what I just said, you'll see where the irony lies. Oftentimes, people bring to their respective mate a situation. And in the end, what they really want is this to be resolved. But what they do is they go to this extremity when they're presenting it. So they say, you always do such and such, or you never do such and such. And what that makes the other person that is listening do, but not. No. They go through their Rolodex of memories, and they find the 1 or 2 times that they did or didn't do it, and they bring that up. Yeah. So the whole conversation,
your whole statement is wrong. Is that one time I did
about that particular time, because they're arguing the fact that you said I always do this or I don't. So you never get a solution to the actual problem because of your choice of word that you use. You said always, you said never, and you never left room for a possibility. When in actuality, all you really needed to do was say, hey, you have a tendency of doing this. I really don't like it. Could you stop? Or you don't do this. I really would prefer for you to do that. Could you stop? Could you start? And the person that you're trying to communicate with, because you were so extreme, they take it left. Now, on the other hand, you may very well be that person, and that's going back to a hearing problem. Yes, you heard them say always, but to waste your time on the one time, or the fact that you could come up with just 2 times.
That's when everybody becomes a lawyer immediately.
Yeah,
they become legally. I got it.
Exactly. Clearly shows that you have a hearing problem, which in turn causes you to have a speaking problem. Whereas you can clearly say, okay, clearly I don't do this all the time, but this is an issue that he or she has with me, and I really need to consider that. But what happens is, again, hearing problem. Nah, I always, now, come on now, that they're clearly not really meaning that. They're being extra. I'm not disputing that. But at the same token, let's really hear what's being said. Stop getting so agitated and trying to prove that you did do it one time. You spent time with the kids one time. Really, that's what our argument is going to be? You cleaned the bathroom one time.
You missed the intent of the entire
exactly. Come on, let's really hear what's being stated here so we can have a conversation about how to come up with a solution. But I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, when that happens, we never even discussed the topic because we got so caught up in the discussion about the one time or the 2 times that we actually did. And there's never a solution. So that gets pushed away. You're both upset because you having hearing problems. and it's hearing problems on both sides because you can say, you know what, you're right. You have done it one time, but you're not going to do that because you're going to get so mad that they pulled out 2 times that you go in on the
you don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, now you're arguing about something that has nothing to do with your particular reason for bringing this to the table in the first place. So
and then they turn back on you and say, see that emotional thing right there? That's why I don't talk to you.
Exactly. So if we're hearing correctly, and again, that's on both sides. So I'm playing both sides. So you brought it to them. You said always. They show you the 2 times or the 1 time. You can say, you know what? You're exactly right. I was wrong in saying always. Clearly, you do it sometimes, but I would prefer it to be more than how often you do it. It's really causing a strain in this situation. We talked about folding clothes last week. We stayed on that topic for a while. So I would really prefer for you to do whatever. So it's a hearing problem on both ends. So just typically when you have a speaking problem, I'm going back to the title, you have a hearing problem. So what voice are you really hearing? Are you hearing what they're saying? Are you even hearing their heart and what they're saying to where you would respond saying, you know what, this person loves me. I'm in a relationship with them. I'm even married to them. There's no way possible that they could be trying to hurt me. So let me make sure I'm hearing this correctly and make sure that you're hearing them. You're not hearing your mother that left you. You're not hearing your sister that betrayed you. You're not hearing yourself who's been talking negative to yourself. You're hearing what they're actually saying. I got some comments. Go ahead, Michelle.
Oh, my comments were like taking it to a little bit left. So if you want to answer the comments first, that's fine.
Oh, well, actually, there's a comment. David Jamel says yes. And then the anger and frustration just gets recycled over. Exactly. And then Lisa Robinson said, you get offended by the choice of words used and stop listening to anything else. And she's laughing out loud because clearly she's been in that predicament. I knew that people would be able to relate to it. And you never actually discuss the actual topic because you get caught on that one word. Now, you say always. You say always. Well, remember the time when it was Easter and it's like, what?
And so again, I'm speaking from somebody who's been married and who is single now, right? And so there's so much at stake in a marriage conversation because you're so emotionally invested in the outcome. And it's so much sometimes about posturing and roles and relationships and expectations, to be honest, and all that's like wrapped up in the conversation. And so it's really hard to step back. But as a single person, because I don't have so much invested in the relationship, and I'm kind of almost like, if this goes south and I'm really not feeling this conversation, I'm probably going to take a step back. Uh, so, but even having that out makes the conversation so much less charged. I'm like, I'm gonna go there a little bit, but you're not gonna get me all the way out there because I don't have as much invested. And so we have to be really honest with ourselves, like, what's at stake here, and then why am I here? And that goes back, like, assuming good intent, which is my fallback. I have to assume good intent. Like you said, I have to assume that this person wants to be here, or they wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah.
Which is why, from a single person standpoint, I'm assuming you want to be here until you look like you don't. And then I'm going to make the assumption, maybe you don't want to be here. That's cool. I don't want to be here neither. I'm out.
Hey, now, it's funny you say that, because as a single person, typically when we're dating, it's not uncommon to bring the negativity from the past relationship to the date. So that one word that the other person who was rude to you or harmful, that trigger word that they say, you heard, again, you didn't hear that person across the table, and you started responding to them negatively. And a lot of the hearing problems is insecurities. It's past hurts that we never had closure with. We never took the time to figure out where it came from. Again, past shows that we've already done, investigating why did that make me so mad, and getting to a place where we love ourselves so much so that we can even look at someone else, assuming that their love, they're coming to us from a loving place, until we ask them and they share with us that it was not from a loving place, and then we have the right to go in or respond to them accordingly. Go ahead, Michelle.
So let me share with you a little bit of a testimony about speaking problem, because I have a listening problem. Good. So I was not able to speak what I really wanted in a relationship, or find my voice and speak clearly without mirroring other people in the room, because what I was hearing was filtered through my insecurities. So it didn't matter how many people told me I was either pretty or I was smart, or, you can do this or you can't do that. I was like, but I don't believe it. So because I didn't believe it, I couldn't speak with confidence. I couldn't speak with clarity. I couldn't say something that might be just, cause a conflict, because I was too afraid of loss. Like, I was too afraid that, for me, everything was, you're going to leave me. Like, it didn't matter what it was. Like, if I disappointed you, then you were going to back away and ultimately leave. So let me try to constantly, be affirming and supportive and present, and again, not self-serving, but serving self of the other person. But that caused me to not be able to speak. Yeah. Because I couldn't hear anything anybody was telling me, including you. In our first couple of years, I was like, it don't matter what you tell me. That's nice. But I'm not going to take that risk. And I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that I want you to show up for me on my birthday. I'm not going to say that I want you to be there for me when I'm having a hard time. I'm not going to say that I have a voice and I deserve to be heard, because I can't hear that. I can't hear anything that's saying that will affirm me. No, so it was my own internal voice.
You don't even believe it.
I didn't believe it. Like, I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear it. I couldn't believe it.
That's right. That's right. I mean, honestly, all you did was describe low self-esteem.
Which causes a speaking problem.
Yeah, exactly. It definitely caused a speaking problem. And the crazy thing about it is, it seems like a muting, like you're muted.
Oh my God, I was living on mute. Like,
you're so loud in your head. You might be audibly muted, but in your head, you are saying some loud negative stuff about yourself. And because I had a very, very low self-esteem for a long time, I said so much negative stuff to myself. And that's what I mean by whose voice are you listening to? Your voice could even be the wrong or worst voice to be listening to when someone else is speaking to you. And that's why it's so important to figure out whose voice you're listening to. And even prior to responding, when you feel that voice is not in your best interest or coming from a malicious place, you simply tell them, well, this is what I'm hearing. Is this
what you're saying? That was one of the tools that changed the game for me, was
exactly
to pause for a second and say, what I think I heard you say was. And give them the chance, whoever it was I was talking to, correct me, because my prior problem was I was making assumptions.
Oh yeah, most
right?
certainly.
And so when I had to stop and say, it was a process of changing my thought process, but it was like, so I think I heard you say was X. And they'd be like, no, it's X plus Y. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, well, what does Y mean to you? Which changed again. The
Yeah,
conversation starts changing.
yeah,
Now my
yeah,
speech becomes a little bit more, oh, okay, so we are in a conversation. I'm not having a conversation with you. We are having a conversation.
yeah, yeah. So basically, all we're saying, or all I'm saying, or as she already confirmed, because that's definitely something I brought to her attention. I'm like, yo, literally asked him, is this what you're saying? From the context of what we're talking about here, that would just be you, by you saying, well, this is what I'm hearing. For one, you're clarifying what voice you're hearing. Two, this is your way of signing or getting them to sign for you. Since you're having a hearing problem, getting them to sign for you or to write so that you can read what it is that they're saying so that you can respond accordingly. This is all this is doing. Since you typically have a hearing problem, this is your way of getting the ability to have an interpreter, so to speak. You're making your own self your interpreter so that you can respond accordingly and you all can actually have conversations, as opposed to you literally fighting someone else that's not in front of you. And it's so unfortunate, but it happens all the time. You have people that are in relationships fighting their fathers. They're in a marital relationship fighting their mothers. They're in a marital relationship fighting their siblings. They're fighting themselves in their disappointments and their failures, and they're bringing it all, and that's the voice that they're really responding to, and it has absolutely nothing to do with it. That person said that wasn't a smart decision, and you took that as you are a dumb person. Your whole being is dumb. And it's like, no, that decision right there, when you did that right there, this was specific decision that you made, that was not smart. Let's learn from this decision. I'm not saying that you're dumb. Matter of fact, you knowing me, how would you even think that I would end up with someone dumb? I'm with you. How did you come to that conclusion? I'm not a big dumb people person. I don't really like to put too much time into somebody. I'm sorry, it's just not my thing.
And that takes knowing the person you're talking to, but also a step of faith in that area. But as a communicator, as the person doing the communicating, if you're sensing this type of reaction from somebody, and I'm saying this from a manager standpoint, right? Yeah. So I know that when you are talking to someone about their work, if they are finding their identity in their work, it doesn't matter what you say about what they're doing. It's going to feel personal. It's going to feel like if I say, could you do this again and just add this? What do you mean I didn't do it right? Like, it just feels some kind of way. So there's an adjustment that has to be made. And so I'm just saying, like, while we're talking about both sides of this equation, then we have to understand that the wiser we get, the more responsible we are to be more present and engaged in helping the other person to hear what we're saying. Like, it's not just you should be better at listening. Sometimes you got to be better at sharing. Be better at knowing your audience and what they're dealing with. And
that's why I gave the example of the all, never, the absolutes. That's like the worst way to come to any kind of conflict or issue. Like, don't come with absolutes, because they're gonna find that one time and the whole conversation is going to shift. And now you gotta take a whole nother route just to get right back to where you started or wanted to start in the actual conversation. So it's definitely necessary to work on your presentation, especially because we know from this whole conversation that people have hearing problems, including yourself. So if you are aware that people have hearing problems, you should definitely take the time to work on your presentation of the information that you're trying to relay to the person. Go ahead.
Let me give you the bookend of this testimony. Yes, I knew that's where I was, and yes, I have done the work. And what used to be a weakness is now a strength. So I have now found myself in speaking engagements, right? And speaking publicly and sharing my story, because I don't have a speaking problem anymore, because I've listened long and hard to both my internal voices and my external environment. And I've listened closely enough to be able to be comfortable with my voice and be comfortable with being able to adapt to the audience. I mean, honestly, just because you're a speaker doesn't mean you just give the same canned speech every time. You have to be sensitive to the nuances in the room and make sure that your message hits home. And so,
Yeah.
And being in that space means that I've also been able to learn how to do this one-on-one, because it's really difficult to speak publicly if you can't really do it one-on-one. And even I think in our relationship, Eddie, we have evolved, and I've become more comfortable with your direct approach. Like you said, why would I be talking to a stupid person? So my internal insecurities about, he thinks I'm crazy, and why would he be talking to me? And I'm like, hold on, time out, technical. You right. You wouldn't be talking to no stupid person.
I'm like, no,
and
that's
I'm not stupid.
No, and that's exactly right. And I mean, honestly, and it's funny that you say that, because.
And you can use me as an example. I'll be all right with it.
No. It's a great example, because we will disregard all of the evidence of who we're with, because we get so caught up on the inaccurate thing that we heard that was clearly not.
Yep, that we have taken in as truth.
Yeah, that was out exactly, and that's what arguments are typically. That's what they are. They're fighting with the truth that you don't want people to know, that you feel is the truth. And when I say truth, I'm not saying in the truth of #9. I'm saying the truth that you adopted that is actually not real. So you made that a thing, and the only reason why you're fighting for it is because you don't like what it is, and you don't want it to be, and you haven't put in the necessary work to get yourself from that train of thought or from that place. So you're upset that they actually showed an actual mirror.
The thing that pushes people over the edge is when they turn the light on it. Like that thing that triggers you is because somebody hit the nerve that is exposed, and it takes you to 1,000.
Most certainly. And when you're there, which is why a lot of people they can't stand it. I'm like, when I come to
you dance on that nerve. You like bing.
I stopped the whole conversation. I'm like, okay, and I move on. That's what you said. The whole 3-day thing. Like, once I've clearly tried to break it down and understand, I know where I came from. I expressed where I came from. I asked you where you came from, but you still can't let it go. We can't really just have a conversation about it. Okay, well, I'm done. I've shared what I had to say. Clearly, you shared what you had to say. And if you like to discuss any further, we can, but I've already shared where I'm at.
Well, okay, so what do you do with those people who are like, you're finished with this conversation, but I'm not? And so they just constantly just chase you.
No, I've never had that problem. Let me tell you why. Because, and this is it's crazy, because like you know, I know that people already have expectations. And so when I share to share. I don't share to get you to get buy-in, and that's what people's problems are. They want you to say, I agree with you. And so that's what they're fighting for. They're not really fighting. Yeah, they're not even fighting for a solution. They just want you to say, I agree with you. So what I do, and it's very common, I've been in business meetings, so they literally ask me, so Mr. Fairley, what is your take on that, or what have you? And I say, okay, this is my take. I heard everybody's take, or what have you. And it might be different from everybody's take. I share, and then another person jumps in. Well, so they're combating what I said, and I say, I'm sorry. You asked me what I felt. I shared what I felt. It was not for you to adopt it as truth. I'm not even asking you all to change what y'all are about to do. I've shared. You all shared. My mind hasn't changed. So if we're not going to, if you're trying to get me to agree, I don't. And I'm not trying to get you to agree. And I'm okay with that. So so where do we go from there? And there's nothing that you could say from that, unless you were talking about changing views. I've already established I don't agree with you, and I'm okay with that. And I don't want you to adopt my views. I literally said, I will sleep well at night if y'all move forward with this. I have no problems with it. You know where I stand. But if this is the majority's thing, I'm fine with that. And people don't know what to do with it, because they're so accustomed to combating. I'm like,
because they feel like a consensus. People are looking for a consensus and agreement, and they feel like if there's no agreement, then we can't move forward. But as you so aptly said, in business or in life, sometimes it's I'm going to do what we agreed to do, not because I believe that we're right, but because it's best for right now, or I'm willing to sacrifice what I believe or think for the greater good, and that is reasonable. And I joke because it's a foundational relationship thing, right? It's like can you wash the dishes because I said so, or because you want to wash the dishes? Like, does it matter as long as the dishes get washed? Like, does it? Do you have to make me want to wash the dishes? Is that what you need to do? Or can I just wash the dishes, even though I don't think I should have to, but they get done?
Yeah. It's like you can't win. It's like,
how about I just wash the dishes? But you don't want to wash the dishes.
The fact that we had to have that conversation is the problem. You should have wanted it. It was like, wait, what? I should have wanted to mow the lawn?
I don't like mowing the lawn. I don't want to mow the lawn, but it's the right thing to do. So I'm going to do it and be quiet. And you're like, but you can enjoy it because it's your house. And you said, no. But I'm going to do it.
Yeah. It's that awkward silence. It's like they don't know what to do with it. And it's like, no, I'm really okay. I heard you. And that's the thing. When I speak to people, I'm intentional about sharing what they share with me in my words to clarify that I understand exactly what you said. I won't parrot what you said. I will take what you said and say it differently, but exactly the same way, so that you understand that I interpreted what you said. I follow you. I hear your heart. And I even give examples of how I can prove to you I hear where you're coming from. I just don't agree with you.
We've had several conversations where I was like, well, why don't you agree? I just laid out a full argument for why it makes sense. And you're like, that's nice. I still don't agree. But you can do what you... I'm like, no. I fully vetted. Like, I have to research. This makes sense. And you're like, I mean, if it's good for you. So, I mean...
Then do it. Exactly.
And then, of course, it's usually I'm going down a rabbit hole. He's like, I mean, I told you. But...
And then you get 3 days. Your number's 3 days.
I'm clearly at 3.5 day.
Yeah, you do. You do. You are a little longer than 3 days. Yeah.
Because I need the afternoon of the second day to
We'll get like a Marco Polo or something like that. And I'm like, oh,
I'm not mad. I don't want to talk to you right now, but I'm not mad.
That's exactly right. That's how it goes. And I'm like, okay.
Which took me a long time to get there. And I say that because a good listener and a good speaker, right? So I didn't have a voice for a long time for emotionally transparent stuff. So I had to start with, let me call you and say, I'm thinking. Because I'm not finished and I'm not fully ready to engage. But I got this from you because you were like, I don't have to agree with you to love you.
Exactly.
That was a very hard truth for me.
Yeah.
What you mean? We just had an argument. I don't particularly like anything that came out of your mouth.
Mama, right. Good to see you.
Like, I don't like anything you just said. Nothing you said that I like. I agree with it. It made me feel some kind of way. Stuff came up and out, and I'm like, that. And he's like, that's nice, but I love you, my sister. And I'm like,
exactly. That my wife, she's the same way. Because, like I said, we can
if
have.
If you loved me, you would say yes.
Yeah, exactly. We can have a disagreement, and I'm like, yo, I'm tapping her on her behind. I'm like, hey, sexy. And she like, wait, what?
I just argued with you. Did you not? Were you not there? We were here.
We had a disagreement, but that has absolutely, DeAndre, what's going on, man? Good to see you. That has nothing to do with how I feel about you. I don't have to agree with you to still be in love with you. Like that's not how my mind works. We just don't agree on that particular thing. But yo, you looking sexy right now. Can we get over this today? Can we cut the 3 days?
But if
down to 1 because I don't have a problem with you.
But that's truth. Like, that is like being in a relationship or being in a conversation where you're listening. Like, you were listening, you heard what they said, and you still came across with, I don't agree. And they're listening. I'll say, use myself. I'm listening. You don't agree. I'm not finished. I need to keep talking till you agree. And you're like,
but
no.
which goes it goes back to the hearing problem, because what that all that means is, for one, you didn't hear that I still love you.
It took a minute.
Yeah. For one, you didn't hear that I still love you, and also, you also didn't even hear what it is that I said, because you're so, again, like,
all I heard was no.
I did all of this research. I did all of this research. So we're combining a whole bunch of things. I did all of this research, and I presented my case, which means expectations. I in my mind, I did this research. When I share this research, I have an expectation that you were like, wow, good research. You're right. And I'm like, no, I don't. I don't see it. I don't see that. And then that's that person's fault.
That they didn't emotional trauma. For those of us who are control freaks and we think we have thought through everything before we open our mouth, we think we have played out all the scenarios. You come across with no? What? I just did all this work. You don't know who you're talking to.
Don Dre just said, he said, likewise, bro. He said, I hit my wife with the Kevin Hart. Are you done? Are you done? I mean, and honestly, that's how I am, honestly. And it's interesting that it was that choice, those choice words. Like, when I'm done with something, I'm done. Like, I literally am. I'm done. Okay, we had that discussion. I see where you stand. You see where I stand. I'm done. Like, I don't hold on to stuff. When I leave a certain area, and sometimes I actually question myself when it comes to that. When I'm here with you, if we're sitting, we're talking, I'm here with you. If I leave and I go there, I'm here. I'm not thinking about work. If I'm not at home, I'm not thinking about home. My wife might pop up in my mind, and I'll text her or I'll email her. But when I'm where I'm at, I'm where I'm at. So when I'm done with that conversation, I'm not at that conversation anymore. I'm done with that conversation. I'm not hearing it over and over again. Go ahead. What'd you say?
I'm not.
I can tell.
I'm not done with this one, but because I need to process. But I think that it's a healthy respect for the fact that you being done and me needing to process does not mean that there's a break in the relationship. It's just a different way of communicating. And so I feel like over time I've learned, and I'm only gonna speak for myself, I've learned to take the day and a half, because it does take me. My listening problem has been cured, but it didn't make it instant. You see what I'm saying? So just because I hear you, like I hear you, and I might have some emotional response to it, but I'm not so quick now to write you off or just say this is an absolute. It's more like, okay, wait. It's gonna take me a little time to take the emotion out, listen to what they're saying, process it, and get back to them.
Yeah, most certainly.
And that's just a healthy respect for myself because of how I'm wired. It doesn't mean that your way of communication is better or mine is wrong. And I think because of our relationship, we've been able to. You give me the space to think and process the way I do, and I accept that you're just special and walk away from a conversation and be done. But that's healthy. That's a healthy respect for each other.
Clearly, my insecurities that I've had and my self-esteem issues, it's apparent that I didn't always operate that way, because my insecurities and my self-esteem issues were from me carrying things that from my childhood all the way to my adulthood with me, from what I heard or thought I heard, even when so once I got clarity, and I learned by getting clarity how to get clarity through communicating effectively, I had a new belief. I had a new truth. So for me to sit there and try to hold on to that, or just sit across someone who I know loves me, I can literally count like immediately and then have to keep on counting how many things that they've done to prove that they love me. It makes absolutely no sense for me to conclude that they don't love me from this exchange right here. So with that, I don't allow for that to bother me. I just share what I share, and I let them know, like I let you know, like, okay, but I still love you. I mean, I literally say, and that's what you mean by a dancer. And I be like, I know you're mad, but I still love you. Talk to you later. You go ahead and sit and stew in that. what my wife really does not like that I do is I say just be mindful that you're deciding to be mad. It's your decision.
Dude.
It's your
That's
decision.
not cool. That's not cool.
That's
not cool.
It's the truth.
That's like,
if that's not a hashtag 9, there is no hashtag 9. Your decision, if your decision to be mad is always yours. Your decision to be happy, your decision to be in love, your decision to be all that, we can go right back to the previous show was expectations. They're all based off of your expectations. We have the expectation and then it's met. Oh, now I love them. We have expectation, it's not met, I hate them. We have expectation, it's met, I'm happy. We have expectation, it's met, it's not met, I'm not happy. They're all decisions. They're decisions that are being made by the outcome that you experience. And as soon as you decide that you're unhappy, that you're happy again, I'm here to talk.
I know, and that's funny. That's funny that you say that because one of the underlying factors for everything that we're talking about is how we feel. You bring how you feel to every conversation, and conversations can uncover and trigger emotions in the process. And how you feel definitely colors the tone of your response. And it's about understanding what triggers you have, and sometimes how to even manage in real time. Like you're one of those people who's really good at managing in real time your emotional response and staying focused on what your intent is, on what you're trying to take away from the conversation. And I think that's a skill that's been learned over time. And I can say that, being a manager and having a lot of people to deal with on a daily basis, I've learned to take some of the emotion out, and just focus on what we're trying to achieve. It ultimately is liberating. But I will say that having a good foundation of trust makes communication so much easier, because you can trust that even if they fly off the handle, it's a season. It's not permanent. It's like they had a moment, and it's okay.
Yep. And it's funny you said that, and Dondre just he said it too, and I want to respond with my response to you. He said that's my wife. He said I need to know what he said sometimes it could be the way it's said, and that's my problem. I come off hard to her, but to me I'm not so. But to me I'm not. So it took me a minute to realize that, and that she's more sensitive than I thought. And I want to respond to him and to you at the same time. One thing that you said earlier in our conversation was my intent. One thing, if you are in a relationship or the circle with me, no matter how stern it might come across, you can't deny my intent. You can't deny that the place that whatever I said came from is coming from. And so another thing that you just said that makes the way that I approach people work is because they know me. So if you have your heart and stuff is not right, your spirit is not right, it doesn't matter how you say it, because they're thinking about who you are and who you've been. And it's hard for them to find as to whether you are in their best interest or not. So you need to make sure that your intent and who you are, it lines up. So where you can, when they finally calm down, because it's hard to hear the truth sometimes, they can finally realize who's sharing it and who they are, who they are, so that when you finally get to break down or even explain to them, hey, grandma, what it is that you really meant, they'll be receptive to it. And you also will have things that you can point them to help them realize, like, really, remember when I talked about the phone call, I'm like, if you listen, had I not cared, I would not have kept him on the phone to not do what he was about to do. So I can't not care, which is what you all are implying in my response, but hold him on the phone because I don't want him to get a fine. That doesn't make sense. So my intent, it always comes across in the end. Always.
So that actually is, there's a name for that, and it's really called micro messaging. This is an awesome book. I had to read it because I was in a situation where I was constantly getting mixed signals. So what was coming out of the person's mouth and what I was perceiving were constantly incongruent. And I realized it was because their body language and their past behaviors and just in general behaviors were not in alignment with what was coming out of their mouth. So it always felt like they were disingenuous or unauthentic or lying, or it just felt like that, even though they were saying the right thing, and it just was really disconcerting. And so that goes to your point where it's much easier to believe that your spouse, your partner, your friend loves you and it's coming from a good place when it's truth.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
if your body's gonna scream the opposite. If you are really, really frustrated and you're trying to act like you're not, you're tapping your foot, you're rolling your eyes, you something. And I'm like, yes, I'm listening to you, dear. I'm listening. Yeah.
And it's funny that you say that. You said basically body language, because the issue with the example that I gave in the beginning of the actual show was sometimes by default, I get so accustomed to this method of exchange because this is my space. Public speaking, interaction with my clients face to face. This is my space. So they hear this and they see passion. On a phone call, you can't see me. You hear yelling. This fool yelling at me. You can't hear. Yeah, exactly. You can't necessarily hear the intent unless you know me from your personal experience. But I just met you and I'm yelling, don't you do that? Or go ask the same questions that you ask, and my intent is lost. So when I got to call him back, he wouldn't even accept my apology. He said, no, what you said was right. I'm glad. I was happy. They were happy, and the establishment that you work for was ultimately happy. So I'm glad that we had the exchange. And I was like, well, I'm glad that you made the call, because all it did was help you realize what my intent and where my passion came from. So we claimed that this wasn't going to be a long show, and it's already an hour.
I think that's not long for us.
So how are we going to conclude this show, Michelle? Because it's a loaded statement. People with hearing problems have speaking problems, definitely deeper than the surface. If you have a problem where you're always arguing, where you're always received as malicious, it's because you have a hearing problem. You're either hearing something that happened to you in the past that has hurt you and then caused you insecurities. You might be hearing something that's in the present that you're saying to yourself that's hurting you because you're trying to hide your insecurities. And they're being exposed. So for that, you're trying to fight to keep them hidden. You're speaking to the disappointment of your mom, your dad, whatever that voice is. You're not really speaking to the person, and because of that, it's causing you to have a speaking problem. So your hearing problem is causing you to have a speaking problem. And I really, really want to challenge you all to ask yourself, whose voice am I listening to when I'm responding, especially when it comes to a relationship standpoint, whether it's in business, whether it's in a romantic relationship, whether it's in marriage, whether it's dating. Like, am I responding to Ricky, the guy that just beat me and left me and all the terrible things that he said? Or am I responding to Terrell and what he said? Was that a trigger word that had nothing to do with his response? Like, what are we responding to when we speak? Make sure that we don't have a hearing problem. So just simply ask, this is what I'm hearing. Is this what you're saying? And allow for them to either correct themselves or give your reason to go in on them like you were about to in the first place. Then let loose. Go ahead, Michelle.
I would say that if you are not connecting, if you feel like your communication isn't hitting home, isn't connecting, isn't drawing you closer and getting clarity and getting what you want out of that exchange, then challenge yourself to find out what you're listening to, whether it's your internal messaging and it's like interference. It's kind of like when you're having a communication, you hear a radio station and you hear the fuzz. The internal chaos can sound like fuzz and it's just blocking out some stuff. or if you find yourself in your communication and you're constantly getting that what face or the I don't get it, or people constantly asking you questions, then maybe you're not engaged fully. It's a lecture and not a conversation.
Yeah, most certainly. And with that being said, we love y'all. I don't know if you all I don't know if you all realize that, but I can assure you, like I'm consistently thinking of you all. What in the world can I speak to assist with people? And I know this is not an uncommon conversation or situation that people are having. It's like, oh my gosh, woman or man, like I can't say nothing to you. I can't say nothing right. I hear it all the time. Like I don't know what to say, or I'm out on a date and I don't know what to say to the woman. Well, if you listen right, yeah, and if your insides are right, what you say shouldn't be a problem. So with that, I'm gonna challenge you. The next time you say I don't know what to say maybe I need to work on what I'm hearing. And I can't stress to you all how much we appreciate your minds and time, and how I am dedicated to serving you all to assist in your relationships romantically and personally with yourselves, to love yourself. I can't stress to you enough how I said, the voice is, what voice are you listening to? Sometimes your voice is the voice, and you have to change your voice and what you're saying to yourself so that you could hear better. And that's for those who have a self-esteem issue, because you can't hear anything about how beautiful or wonderful or intellectual you are when you are so loud in your head, down talking yourself. So I love you all. We love you all, and we will see you all next week. Until then, have a wonderful rest of your week. Be safe.